Yeah, ajmahari. Yet again. Whoa. Yeah, the topic in this video is the codependence dilemma. Whether you're with an internalizing quiet borderline, or you have been, or you are with or have been with a classic externalizing, acting out borderline. The codependence dilemma. What am I talking about here? Well, this is the aspect within the relationship. So if you're an ex right now, if you've been ghosted, or you had to leave, or it's on again, off again, okay, no closure, very difficult, very painful, very hard to process. People need healing recovery, not just based on that, but that's a huge piece. But guess what happens for so many people for often long periods of time in a dating relationship or in a relationship with somebody with BPD? With this aspect of the dilemma, no matter the presentation of BPD. You want to talk about it. You want to understand it. You know what that is? It's a precursor to if the relationship ruptures, breaks up, on again, off again, or they ghost you, and it's the final split. What am I talking about? No closure. You don't get closure. Episode after episode after episode after episode. Some people in these marriages with people with BPD, quiet or externalizing, for 25, 30 years, 10 years, 15 years, 3 years. Dating relationships that might have gone on for, months, weeks to months to a year, 2 years, 3 years. You never get closure about what's happening in the relationship. They don't sit there and talk to you about it rationally or reasonably, right? After every time that they are triggered to dysregulated emotion and whatever else happens, and let me remind you, it isn't triggered dysregulated emotion with its accompanying dissociation that they can age regress and be, not necessarily 2, but like a 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7-year-old tantruming child, whether in silence or acting it out. So they are not, quote, 2-year-olds pretending to be adults, quote, unquote, all the time. This is when they're triggered to dysregulated emotion, which often is accompanied by dissociation and age regression. Not always, but often. And not for everybody, but most with BPD. Unless until, way more treatment. Or treatment to begin with. But so here, you're dealing with, so here, no over there, no over here. You're dealing with no closure. From the moment you meet this person, idealization, you have responsibility in that, but you don't know what it is, because who would know, And then on goes the relationship. And then the first, maybe a little honeymoon phase, maybe a little bit longer one. And then the first split comes. And you're like, what? Whether it's quiet BPD or an externalizing acting out BPD that you're with or were with. You are then, each and every time that they're triggered to emotional dysregulation and to, away from baseline and to some acting in or acting out, let's just say, quote, an episode, unquote, for lack of a better way to put it. You're dealing with fear, obligation, and guilt, not sure what's going on. You might even be catching on to patterns and you're seeing this repeats, or you might have even seen it and you might still be dating and you've seen, and you married the person, because, you didn't know what it was, right? But you've been dealing with no closure since the very first split to devaluation. Whether they internalize it and give you that, they don't really give you the silent treatment, but what is experienced as a silent treatment, or the externalizing borderline yelling and screaming and raging at you or throwing stuff around. You are dealing with no closure every single time that happens. This is one of the ways I want people to understand how you accrue damage. This is specifically one way. This is incredible accrued damage on your part and woundedness. Being terrific, I don't want to use the word terrifically, horrifically impacted, because these things never get resolved. And when I say never, we really shouldn't talk in absolutes or black, but they don't ever get resolved. Because especially a person with untreated BPD, not really way significantly treated BPD, a year of DBT isn't going to do it, okay? The thing is, you're continually dealing, I want you to hear this one more time, since the beginning with the first split to the value, throughout the entire relationship, however long it lasts, or if you're still in one, or you're considering letting them hoover you back after, you've been dealing with no closure, after no closure, after no closure, after no closure. And it's just accruing inside of you, and then you start walking on those eggshells. And it's like, it's only a matter of time, right? Whatever makes that happen, gonna make that happen. You never know what it is, what I do, what I say. Is it my fault? God, I should have got home on time. I should have done this. I should have said that. I shouldn't have done this. It's always my fault. What? I don't know. God, I'm trying to love this person. What? You're always, all of that, you have nothing to do with, right? But you take it on. People at BPD don't do closure in a moment, let alone at the end of a relationship. They don't know how. They got no self. They can't take personal responsibility. I'm not excusing it. I'm just explaining it. They can't take personal responsibility. Not even in a moment. Not even day after day, week after week. Triggered, dysregulated emotional response, blow up and/or silent treatment after the other, 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 ad infinitum for a lot of people, unfortunately. This is accruing damage in you, accruing stress, accruing frustration, accruing sense of you're failing them while they're projecting all over you. So many people have been through this and might not have heard it explained this way, because I can explain it this way because I had BPD and fully recovered. And because I have 30 years experience working with clients. And because I'm a mental health professional. But no closure doesn't just begin when the relationship ends. No. You've accrued stockpiles of the agony of no closure with each and every triggered event that later you're feeling like is your fault unless you really, start to learn more about this, right? You just think, what did I do? What now? What happened? And then you try to start avoiding, and you're walking on eggshells, and you're trying to it's like, can I please find some bubble wrap that can kind of contain this and won't happen again? Because I don't get what? Because people don't understand what's going on. And then codependents are racing to try to make sure you get all the conditions right, and you're trying to do everything you can to prevent that from happening again, because every time it happens, there's no closure. What do I mean by that? Well, there's no conversation. You try to have a conversation, they'll throw in a red herring. They don't gaslight, actually. It's not what they're doing. But they will escape, right? They'll use defense and escape, and often they have strong intellects. They'll use that. They'll get you confused. They'll throw in a red herring. You'll say, but you know what? You might make a perfectly reasonable statement about, well, you just, and from the fact of the door, and then the cake fell on the floor, and you all of a sudden, and you describe what they did, and I didn't, and they'll be like, well, yeah, but okay, but last Tuesday, you left the laundry in the washing machine. What about that? And you'll be like, what? This is where J.A.D.E begins: justify, argue, defend, and explain. I have a video on that, by the way. Maybe I'll make a card pop up here. You never know. So it's like, you're talking about what happened, and the cake fell on the floor, and what they did or didn't, that they took off, or they were giving you the silent treatment, or they were sulking, or they were pouty, or they screamed at you, or they picked up the cake and they threw it against the wall. All this stuff just happened, right? One way or the other. Something really big happened. And you're like, what? Why? What did I do? And then they're going to come along and blame me for it. And so you just ask that question. Well, when the thing in the cake hit the floor, and then you picked up the cake and you threw it in the wall, and they'll look at you they're incredulous, what? You can, what? And it's not that they forgot. No, that's rarely ever the case. But with dissociation, they can not remember it in sequence or whatever, but their first thing is they're still in a very defensive place. So you're going to be like, what? Why did that? And so you're trying to talk about this flipping cake. Let's just stick with that example. They knocked it off the thing. Accident maybe. They went nuts. I don't know. Something else triggered them. You don't know what it is. Who knows what it is? They don't know what it is. But anyway, then they go around the cycle. And then they smashed the cake into the wall. They picked up, smashed into the wall. There's cake all over the kitchen now. And you're trying to talk about, why is the cake all over the kitchen? Why did you do that? Why would you do that? what are we going to do? You know, and they'll just go, but, what? And they'll be like, and there might be a second pause before they launch an attack, and it could be anything, but I'm just going to stick with what I said. So they'll say, well, but last Tuesday, like, I couldn't believe what you did because you left the laundry in the washer. And I had to wash it all over again because, like, it didn't dry right and it smelled funny. What about that? And you're like, the cake, the kitchen, what's going on here? The washing machine, the laundry, whether or not you actually left the laundry in the washing machine or not, or whether they're just picking a red herring. Sometimes it's an actual event. You kind of forgot something. But, like, this is how they defend whatever they've just done, right? After they've been triggered, after the behavior, after the silent treatment. Oh, and you bring it up. Oh, my God. How dare you bring it up? There's your no closure moment every single time. And then when you get to the end of a relationship, you wonder why no closure is so freaking painful. Because you haven't had closure or explanation or meeting of the minds or dialogue or anything reasonable about all of the times that they were triggered to emotional dysregulation and then did whatever the pattern is, externalizing, internalizing. And you're like, in the J.A.D.E, because they will do this. They will say, you'll say, well, okay, but the cake's on the wall. I'm going to go through this one more time. But you just threw the cake on the wall, and what happened? And those look at you like, and they will be in a state. And they will be still defended. And they will be still, the externalizing will be. And the internalizing, it's not going to be quite the situation. So I'm talking more about externalization here, of BPD. So they're still going to be in a state. So you're going to say, well, what happened? Or or do you need help cleaning? You could say anything in the world there that you can think of saying, right? And you're going to be like, and if it's not the first time, it's the 50th or the 100th time you've seen it, okay? So you might not be shocked by saying what you're saying, but you're still going to want to ask that question. Why? Because it's reasonable and rational to do so. And they're in a totally emotionally different place, driven place, no reason or anything, and they can't take accountability, and they gotta defend it. They gotta defend it. This goes back to childhood, goes back to adverse experience. It's a pattern in them, and they don't even do it on purpose, but still. So you could say, well, why is the cake like, what? And then they'll give you that, what are you talking about? And you'll say, what do you mean what I'm talking about? And then you'll mention it again. They'll be like, no, seriously, what are you talking about? If they can't go to something right away, The next thing you'll know, it could be as simple as like, you're always doing this to me. You're always getting mad. I don't know what you're talking about. What? What now? And you're like, but wait, what just happened? So they can find all kinds of red herrings and all kinds of ways to defend. Like, they could also say something like, well, but you know what? Like, but I'm always doing the dishes, and you never help me with that because you really don't love me, do you? And you're like, but the cake? She's not doing, and now it's on the wall, and what has that got to do with, I didn't do the dishes? And you know what? Here's where they're going to get you with intellect, even if you're very intelligent yourself, because they're poised and ready, and this is an inbred pattern now in them. And you're going to be like, you're going to forget the cake, the messes in front of you and everything. But by the time they finish throwing stuff at you and projecting onto you, you're going to be like 6 subjects over to the left going like, what? And then you're not even going to, you're going to end up in the J.A.D.E of justify, argue, defend, and explain. Well, you do help with the dishes. You help with the dishes often. You do love them. No, you don't love me. No, you never helped me with the dishes. And by the way, last Thursday, the dog and all the mud and the floor and the kid on the rug. And you're like, so now you've probably even forgotten what just happened. And you're like in their circles. And that's exactly what works for them. And that's exactly where you get no closure, no explanation. Nothing ever gets settled. And you're like, now you're defending, well, no, I didn't let the dog in with muddy feet. That you did that. Last Tuesday, yeah, I remember, and you did that, but I cleaned that up. No, you didn't. I had to clean it up, and you let the dog with the baby. And the next thing, and then they'll go on to the next, and you're sitting there going, there is cake on the wall. I mean, yes, so, no closure ever with their actions and reactions and, quote, episodes, unquote, within a relationship. J.A.D.E, justify, argue, defend, and explain. And they're not the ones doing the justifying, the arguing, the defending, and explaining for what they did that you've asked them about or you want to know, or like what happened. No, they'll put you on the defensive really skillfully. But it's pattern behavior. It's not like you sit there and consciously go, I'll get him, I'll show her. Never mind what I just did. But it is a big defense against never mind what I just did, because they're used to doing that from childhood. I know, because I had BPD. Here's a little example for you. My mother says I can't have any cookies before dinner. I'm like 9. So I go in the kitchen. She's sitting in the living room. I have to go down the hall to get to the bedroom. I go and I get some peanut butter cookies that she had baked. But the only good thing she ever did. Good baker. So I get them and I put them in my sleeve of my shirt and whatnot. And I'm walking along and they fall out and mostly break and stuff. And she's like, right fix for me, like rageful. Are you taking cookies after I told you not to take cookies? You're And I stand there and I go, no. And not because I was all borderline yet, but I'm like, no, I didn't take any cookies. What are you talking about? Why do I give you that example? Because by the age of 9, that was inbred in me already. Just say no, I didn't do it. Because I get punished for stuff I didn't even do. So this is where it comes from. In a lot of people with BPD's childhoods, this defense has been tried, true, tested, practiced, but it was a defense. It was a way to survive in childhood. And in adulthood now, it's way maladaptive and makes no sense whatsoever. But guess what? No closure within the relationship. Time and time and time, infinitesimally time and time again. And then people are a little shocked that the no closure is a big hang up, like really gets people stuck and hurts like hell along with everything else when the relationship is over. You've got no closure accrued up the yin-yang. Stress held in your body, frustration, never getting heard, not being seen, always getting blamed. No closure happens every time they are triggered to dysregulated emotion, and you try to talk about it, try to hold them accountable, try to just discuss what happened, and they're like, nope. They defend against it. You get into the J.A.D.E conversations, justify, argue, defend, and explain, and you're going to be the one justifying, arguing, defending, explaining, multiple things they'll throw at you that have nothing to do, in this example, with the friggin' cake that they slammed up against the wall. Think about that. And if you are the ex of someone with BPD, and you're not sure if it's really over, or it's on and it's off, or you've been away for a while and you tried to go no contact, or you've gone no contact, but now you're not sure you can hold it because, well, you left an avenue of way for them to contact you open, and now they're using it, and guess what? They're promising you. Oh, yes. They're promising you that they'll get therapy. They're in therapy. They understand. They want to try again. They're so very sorry. And all that could be very true, except the therapy part never really usually actually, sticks, or they don't really go, or they forget that promise real quick. But they may really be sorry, and they're desperate to have you get them back. And people are sitting poised right now wondering, well, should I, because he or she is really saying they're going to get help this time, and they're really sorry, and they seem to have more awareness, and don't fall for it. You're still not over working out all those moments of no closure, stuff happened, no closure, no understanding, no person, they didn't take responsibility, there's no accountability. What? And then I did this and I did that, I had to argue. The stress, the frustration, the crazy-making reality of that. No closure is always, it's experienced over and over again in relationships, let me say it one more time. And it accrues in you. And no closure at the end of a relationship is its own thing, plus it's every other no closure that you've been through with them. For some people, it's been years. Maybe for others, it's not that long, but it accrues and it wounds. And then people wonder why they get overreactionary and they're losing themselves. Because every time you get in a J.A.D.E argument, you're like, what is going on here? Because you have entered They're parallel, emotionally dysregulated, overly dependent survival universe of uh-oh. And you've now departed your logical, fairly balanced, place in life and self. Think about it. No closure with every episode of emotional dysregulation and the J.A.D.E arguments and conversations. And I've had a few clients recently that told me, and in the past, that in 10 to 15 to 20-year relationships, they calculated just roughly, there were over 10, I've had somebody say 7,000, somebody say 10,000, 12,000, 15,000 arguments. 15,000 of these no closure experiences in the relationships. Hope that gives you something to think about, and especially if you're about to let them hoover you back, or you're really missing them right now. Are you really? Really? Yeah, there's that part, right? But remember, how many? Thousands, hundreds, thousands of no closure moments. Best to deal with the ultimate no closure and then process all those no closures and take care of yourself.